One woman's love life ended a 500-year-old republic. The other got accused of having sex with a horse. Tonight, Cleopatra versus Catherine the Great. Two queens, two legendary scandals, one question: who was worse? Welcome to Historical Verses, the channel that puts history on trial. Here's what most people think they know. Cleopatra seduced her way through Rome's greatest generals. Catherine collected young lovers like other monarchs collected stamps. Both were dangerous, both were depraved, both ruined men. But here's what nobody tells you. One of these women triggered an actual world war. The other mostly gave European gossips something to giggle about at dinner parties. Yet somehow, the woman with the smaller body count got the more grotesque slander. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which queen earned her scandalous reputation and which one got framed. We're judging them on 4 weighted criteria. History demands rigor. We can't just say, well, that one sounds worse, and call it a day. The percentages are set, but the reasons, I won't spoil them just yet. And if the final scores land within a whisker of each other, we invoke the tiebreaker. Whichever woman's scandals more directly caused bloodshed takes the crown. Now, a quick promise. By the showdown, I'll tell you whether Cleopatra actually dissolved a priceless pearl in vinegar just to flex on Mark Antony. And I'll tell you the truth about that horse. You know exactly which story I mean. First, we set the stage. Then, case versus case. Finally, the scoreboard. Cleopatra, the 7th Philopator, ruled Egypt from 51 BCE until her death in 30 BCE. The last pharaoh of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a 300-year-old Greek family that had held power since Alexander the Great's general seized the throne. By the time Cleopatra took the crown, Egypt was rich, cultured, and dangerously dependent on Rome's goodwill. One wrong move and the legions would come. Cleopatra made several moves. None of them were wrong in the way you'd expect. 18 centuries later, a minor German princess named Sophie arrived at the Russian court. She converted to Orthodoxy, married the heir to the throne, and renamed herself Catherine. Her husband was an immature fool who played with toy soldiers while she read Voltaire. Their marriage was loveless, possibly unconsummated, definitely doomed. Catherine fixed that problem in 1762. With the help of her lover and his brothers, she overthrew her husband in a palace coup. He died in custody 8 days later, under circumstances nobody wanted to investigate too carefully. She ruled Russia for 34 years, expanded the empire, patronized the arts, corresponded with philosophers, and yes, she took lovers. About a dozen by reliable counts, not the hundreds that gossip claimed, not the stallion that slander invented. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. 2 empresses, 2 sets of scandals, 2,000 years of propaganda. One will walk away as history's more scandalous queen. The other will walk away as the victim of history's ugliest smear campaign. Let's start with the woman who made Rome lose its collective mind. The year is 41 BCE. You're standing on the docks at Tarsus. Word has spread that the Egyptian queen is coming to answer questions about her loyalty. Rome wants to know whose side she was on when Caesar died. And then you see the barge. Gilded hull, purple sails, silver oars beating the water in time to flutes. Cleopatra reclines on deck dressed as Aphrodite, goddess of love. Her attendants fan her in Cupid costumes. The perfume drifts ashore so thick that Plutarch would later claim the wind itself fell lovesick. Exhibit: purple sails, silver oars. Mark Antony, Rome's toughest general, master of the Eastern legions, the man who was supposed to be interrogating her, took one look and apparently forgot he had a job. They became lovers. They became political partners. They founded a drinking club called the Inimitable Livers. Not a joke, that was actually its name, and reportedly kept 8 wild boars roasting at all times, so one would always be perfectly done whenever Antony got hungry. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Antony had a wife. Then he had a different wife, Octavian's sister Octavia, married specifically to seal a political alliance. Antony ignored her, publicly, for years. That was scandal. What came next was catastrophe. In 34 BCE, Antony staged the Donations of Alexandria. Picture this: a massive public ceremony where he hands out Roman territories to Cleopatra's children. He declares her teenage son, Caesarion, King of Kings. He names Cleopatra herself Queen of Kings. He's essentially announcing that Rome's Eastern Empire now belongs to an Egyptian dynasty. Exhibit: King of Kings. Octavian, Caesar's legal heir, Antony's rival, and history's greatest propaganda mastermind, seized the moment. He claimed to have obtained Antony's private will. He read it aloud before the Senate. It allegedly proved Antony planned to move the capital to Alexandria and make Cleopatra's children his heirs. Whether that will was real or forged, historians still debate. What happened next isn't debatable. In 32 BCE, the Roman Senate declared war. Not on Antony, that would make it civil war, Roman against Roman. They declared war on Cleopatra, personally, specifically, one foreign woman against the entire Roman Republic. Exhibit: One woman versus Rome. Rome had never done this before. What drove an empire to declare war on a single person? Let's back up. This wasn't Cleopatra's first Roman. The year is 48 BCE. You're a Roman senator, and there's an Egyptian queen living in Julius Caesar's garden villa, with a baby she claims is his son, while Caesar's actual Roman wife lives across the city. Imagine the dinner party conversations. Cleopatra didn't sneak into Rome, she brought an entourage. She brought her infant son Caesarion, a name that translates to Little Caesar, which is either adorable or a political manifesto depending on your loyalties. She brought Egypt's wealth and Egypt's confidence. And Caesar? Caesar put a golden statue of her in the temple of Venus Genetrix, his family's patron goddess. A living foreign queen, rendered in gold, standing in a Roman holy place. The orator Cicero met her during this period. His review was succinct: "I detest the queen." He complained about her insolence in private letters. He wasn't alone. Conservatives whispered that Caesar planned to make himself king with this Egyptian woman at his side. Some claimed he was drafting a law to permit himself 2 wives. Here's what you need to understand about Roman masculinity. Roman men could have affairs. Roman men could keep mistresses. What Roman men absolutely could not do was appear controlled by a woman, especially a foreign queen who wore her own crown and worshipped animal-headed gods. Caesar wasn't just breaking the adultery taboo, he was inverting the entire power structure. Romans noticed. Now, let's be fair to Cleopatra for a moment. She was a 21-year-old queen fighting for survival. Her kingdom was wealthy, but militarily weak. Rome was the superpower. Caesar was the most powerful man in that superpower. Aligning with him wasn't seduction, it was statecraft. She spoke 9 languages. She was the first Ptolemy in 3 centuries to actually learn Egyptian. She ran a competent administration during constant Roman civil wars. If Cleopatra had been a king forging this alliance, historians might have called it brilliant diplomacy. But she wasn't a king. So they called her a sorceress. Fair point acknowledged. Then Caesar took 23 stab wounds on the Ides of March. Cleopatra grabbed her 3-year-old son and fled Rome before anyone decided to finish what the conspirators started. Those knives would catch up with Caesarion 14 years later. Octavian made sure of it. Can't have a rival son of Caesar walking around. Cleopatra's romances didn't just generate gossip, they generated a war declaration, a dead son, and the end of a republic. Catherine's scandals never came close to this body count. Or did they? The year is 1762. You're a soldier in the Izmailovsky Guards, stationed in St. Petersburg. It's July. The sun barely sets this far north, and your empress, the German-born wife of your increasingly unpopular Tsar, has just shown up at your barracks in a military uniform, sitting astride a white stallion, asking if you'd like to commit treason. You say yes. So does everyone else. Exhibit: treason on a white horse. This is how Catherine became the Great. Not through inheritance, not through marriage, through a bedroom conspiracy that became a military coup. Her lover, Grigory Orlov, coordinated the whole thing. He and his brothers were popular among the guards. Catherine was popular among anyone who'd spent 5 minutes with her idiot husband, Peter III. 8 days after his surrender, Peter was dead. Officially, illness. Unofficially, Alexei Orlov, Grigory's brother, got too enthusiastic during a drunken brawl with the prisoner. Catherine always claimed she didn't order it. She probably didn't, but she certainly didn't investigate it either. One dead husband. The lovers were just getting started. Enter Grigory Potemkin, Catherine's greatest love and possibly her secret husband. Brilliant, flamboyant. He wore a diamond-studded eye patch over his missing eye and showed up to state councils in Turkish robes. He also helped Catherine annex Crimea, build the Black Sea Fleet, and expand Russia by 200,000 square miles. Their relationship was so close that some historians believe they married in secret around 1774. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling. She called him husband in coded letters. They exchanged over 1,000 pieces of correspondence. Even after their physical relationship ended, he remained her most trusted advisor until his death. Exhibit: husband in code. Potemkin also allegedly helped vet her later, younger favorites. Some sources claim he acted as a kind of romantic HR department, screening candidates for compatibility with the Empress. That image stuck, and the image got worse. But Potemkin wasn't her only ex with a crown. One of Catherine's early lovers was a Polish nobleman named Stanislaw Poniatowski. When their affair ended, she made him king of Poland. Literally. She installed her ex-boyfriend on a foreign throne because she thought he'd be controllable. He wasn't controllable enough. His reform attempts irritated her. So she orchestrated the partitions of Poland, carving up his entire kingdom with Prussia and Austria until Poland ceased to exist as an independent nation for over a century. Her romantic history didn't just cause gossip, it redrew the map of Europe. What made Catherine truly unusual wasn't the lovers themselves, it was the system. Over 34 years, she took approximately 12 official favorites. The key word is official. This wasn't secret. These men had formal court positions. They received military ranks, noble titles, and staggering gifts. One departing favorite walked away with over 1,000 serfs, 1,000 human beings transferred like a severance package. Catherine's setup resembled nothing so much as the mistress system male monarchs had used for centuries. Louis XV of France kept a private harem at Parc aux Cerfs. Nobody called him a nymphomaniac. Catherine, doing roughly the same thing in reverse? Messalina of the Neva, the whore of Petersburg. Now, let's steelman this for a moment. Catherine was a widow, or close enough. Her marriage had been loveless and probably sexless. As absolute monarch, she answered to no husband and no church. She chose companions who met her needs, treated them with genuine kindness, and never let any of them dictate policy. Most lived out comfortable lives on generous pensions. If that's depravity, it's remarkably humane depravity. Kings did worse without earning a fraction of the slander. Fair point. But then came the propaganda, and it didn't stay proportionate. By the 1790s, French pamphleteers were printing pornographic, secret histories of her court. British cartoonists drew her straddling continents with tiny men crawling beneath her skirts. 12 lovers became dozens, dozens became hundreds, and then came the horse. You've heard this one. Everyone's heard this one. The claim that Catherine died attempting intercourse with a stallion using some kind of harness apparatus that broke and crushed her. I'm going to say this clearly. It didn't happen. Catherine died of a stroke. She collapsed in her bathroom, was carried to her bed, and passed away the following day surrounded by doctors. There were witnesses. There are official records. The death was mundane, but mundane doesn't make good gossip. The horse story emerged almost immediately, probably spread by French revolutionaries who hated monarchs, or by her own son, Paul, who resented her and may not have tried hard to correct the record. There is no contemporary evidence, no diary entry, no diplomatic letter, no court document. The most powerful woman in Europe, surrounded by thousands of servants, and nobody noticed a stallion hoisted into her bedroom? The myth survived because it confirmed what her enemies wanted to believe. A woman with that much power must be a monster. She must have desires beyond human. She must have died proving she was never really one of us. That's the case against Catherine. A woman who helped murder her husband, installed an ex-lover as king of a country she later destroyed, and maintained a formal rotation of companions for 3 decades. But here's what's strange. Cleopatra's scandals triggered a war that killed tens of thousands and ended the Roman Republic. Catherine's scandals triggered one coup, influenced one partition, and otherwise powered a stable, expanding empire for 34 years. Yet Catherine got the horse story. Cleopatra just got the asp. One verdict will seem obvious. The other will feel deeply unfair. The cases have been made. The evidence is in. It's time for the final showdown. 2 queens, 4 criteria, 1 verdict. First criterion, norm violation, weighted at 20%. Cleopatra didn't just bend Roman norms, she snapped them over her knee. A foreign queen openly living with Rome's dictator while his Roman wife sat across the city. A golden statue of herself installed in a Roman temple. Children by 2 consecutive Roman leaders, neither of whom she married by Roman law. She violated gender norms, marital norms, religious norms, and xenophobic taboos simultaneously. The Romans invented a slur for her: Meretrix Regina, whore queen. Cleopatra scores 9 out of 10. Catherine violated plenty of norms too, but she had more cover. Absolute monarch, widow in practice. Her lovers were her own subjects, not foreign enemies. She was doing what kings had always done, just with the genders reversed. Scandalous, yes. Unprecedented system breaking? Not quite. Catherine scores 7 out of 10. Second criterion, contemporary outrage, weighted at 25%. For Cleopatra, the answer is an entire propaganda war. Cicero despised her in private letters. Poets competed to insult her most creatively. Propertius accused her of setting Egypt's jackal-headed gods against Jupiter himself. And then the nuclear option. The Roman Senate declared war on her. Personally. Not on Antony, that would admit civil war. On Cleopatra. One woman versus the Roman Republic. That's not gossip. That's institutional fury. Cleopatra scores 9 out of 10. Catherine faced whispers, not war declarations. Her lovers were an open secret, but open criticism was dangerous. Foreign ambassadors gossiped in dispatches. French pamphleteers printed obscene satires. But within Russia, nobody challenged her. No faction weaponized her love life to destabilize her reign. The scandal stayed in drawing rooms and diplomatic pouches. Catherine scores 6 out of 10. Third criterion, political fallout. Our heaviest weight at 30%. Cleopatra's romantic entanglements made corpses. Her alliance with Antony became the flashpoint for the final war of the Roman Republic. Actium killed thousands. Her defeat ended a 300-year dynasty. Egypt was annexed. Antony died by his own sword. Cleopatra died by poison, probably despite the asp legend. And Caesarion? Her teenage son by Caesar? Octavian had him executed. Too many Caesars wasn't good for business. One woman's love life contributed to regime change across the Mediterranean, the birth of an empire, and a body count in the tens of thousands. Cleopatra scores 9 out of 10. Catherine's affairs had consequences, but different in scale. The Orlov coup put her on the throne and her husband in a grave. Her ex-lover, Poniatowski, became King of Poland, which she later dismembered. But her affairs didn't threaten her own power. They reinforced it. Orlov helped her seize the throne. Potemkin helped her expand the empire. Nobody invaded Russia because the empress had a 22-year-old boyfriend. Catherine scores 6 out of 10. Final criterion, posthumous slander, weighted at 25%. Cleopatra got the femme fatale treatment for 2,000 years. Roman poets called her a witch. Shakespeare made her a drama queen. Hollywood made her Elizabeth Taylor in eyeliner. About that pearl, here's the truth I promised. Pliny the Elder recorded the story. Cleopatra allegedly bet Antony she could spend 10 million sesterces on a single meal, then dissolved a priceless pearl in vinegar and drank it. Dramatic? Absolutely. Chemically plausible? Not really. Pearls don't dissolve quickly in weak vinegar. She might have crushed it. She might have used stronger acid. She might have staged the whole spectacle as a flex. But the legend stuck because it confirmed what Romans wanted to believe, that she was recklessly extravagant, dangerously theatrical, too foreign to trust. Still, Cleopatra's posthumous slander was consistent, an amplified version of what Romans said while she lived. Cleopatra scores 8 out of 10. Catherine? Catherine got the horse. A complete fabrication invented after her death by people who couldn't accept that a woman had outmaneuvered every man in Europe for 34 years. No contemporary source, no court document. Pure misogynistic fiction designed to reduce a brilliant ruler to a punchline about bestiality. 200 years later, it's still the first thing people think of. That level of character assassination, slander that completely eclipses the actual scandals, earns Catherine the highest score in this category. Catherine scores 9 out of 10. Let's add the totals. Cleopatra, 8.75. Catherine, 6.95. The gap is 1.8. We don't need the tiebreaker. By the criteria we established, norm violation, contemporary outrage, political fallout, and posthumous slander, one woman was measurably, demonstrably worse. And it's not even close. The verdict is Cleopatra. By every metric that matters, norm violation, contemporary outrage, political fallout, she wasn't just more scandalous, she was catastrophically scandalous. Her affairs didn't generate whispers, they generated war declarations. Her romances didn't influence policy, they ended a republic and birthed an empire. Cleopatra's love life contributed to the deaths of tens of thousands at Actium. It contributed to the execution of her own teenage son. It contributed to the annexation of a 300-year-old kingdom and the transformation of the entire Mediterranean political order. Catherine overthrew one husband and kept a dozen boyfriends. That's a Tuesday afternoon for most European monarchies. The margin was 1.80. The bloodshed calculus wasn't necessary. And yet, here's the part that should bother you. Catherine got the worse slander, by far. Cleopatra was called a witch and a whore, but those insults connected to things she actually did. She really did live with Caesar. She really did ally with Antony. She really did present herself as a goddess. The propaganda exaggerated, but it started from real events. Catherine got accused of having sex with a horse. A complete fabrication. A lie invented after her death by people who couldn't stand that a woman had outmaneuvered every man in Europe for 34 years. Cleopatra's scandals were real, but amplified. Catherine's worst scandal was manufactured from nothing. The woman who caused more damage got the more proportionate smear campaign. The woman who caused less damage got the most grotesque slander in royal history. What does that tell us? It tells us that scandal isn't really about what you do. It's about who writes the history. Cleopatra's enemies controlled the narrative from the moment Octavian took power. They built her into a cautionary tale, useful for justifying a war, convenient for explaining why a great Roman general betrayed his country. The propaganda was cruel, but functional. Catherine's enemies had no grand narrative, they just had resentment. A woman with that much power, that much intellect, that much freedom, she had to be brought low somehow. If they couldn't defeat her in life, they'd humiliate her in death. The horse story isn't propaganda, it's revenge. So, who was worse? Cleopatra. By the numbers, by the consequences, by any honest measure of what their scandals actually cost. But here's the fortune cookie, the line I want you to remember. The real scandal is how we remember them, not what they did. Cleopatra's affairs nearly destroyed the ancient world. Catherine's affairs mostly offended polite society. Yet Catherine became the punchline, and Cleopatra became the legend. Both were brilliant. Both were ruthless. Both navigated worlds that wanted them to fail because they were women wielding power in arenas built for men. History judged them for their bedrooms because history couldn't forgive them for their thrones. The verdict is in, but history is never that simple. Who gets your vote? Cast your judgment in the comments below. Now, if you enjoyed watching two powerful women get judged by the propaganda their enemies invented, you might appreciate our most popular episode. Which royal execution was more shocking? Anne Boleyn or Marie Antoinette? Two queens, two blades, one verdict on who got the worst death. And next time on Historical Verses, Henry VIII versus Sultan Ibrahim. Who executed more wives? Subscribe so you don't miss the body count. Thanks for watching Historical Verses.